Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Larry.
Hi, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Josh. And this is going to be the last discussion that Jesse's on for a little while.
Yeah. It's very bittersweet because I'll miss you guys and I don't even know if I'll have time to read. But little baby James is very exciting and I'll be at least reading to him. So
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It still counts as reading.
It does, yeah, I was going to say, because it still counts towards my book count of the year. See, if I read, Mother Goose. Mother
reading
Goose
a lot
books.
of children.
Children's books.
But we are going to be going over a pretty thought-provoking and infuriating short story. It was originally published in Fantasy and Science Fiction in November-December 2020 issue, and it's called Skipping Stones in the Dark by Amman Sabet. It was also published in the Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy from 2021.
Yes, which is how I found it.
That's where that's where it's probably easiest to obtain it, because you may either need a subscription or you would have to purchase it off of Fantasy and Science Fiction's site. The discussion starter I have for this is: this short work is told from the perspective of a spaceship known as the Fold, and now it does its job in overseeing and caring for its inhabitants. But not everyone is pleased with this dystopian world where everyone is cared for as a collective, and those that think differently must be punished. How did this story make you feel?
I wouldn't necessarily say how it made me feel. I was just very intrigued because I feel like most dystopian things that we read are not really like this. This is something that I felt was very different. I also didn't necessarily see it, and maybe I just interpreted it differently. I didn't see it necessarily as if they thought differently, they were punished, but they were like how he said, it's like, if you wanted to be independent, well, here's your independence. Do you like it? And it's like, well, no. I don't like it.
Number one, they had to actually do something to make a statement. Like for Unica, who is the central, she's the one that
they focused on.
Yeah, they concentrated on. She took the laser and put a scar on her eyebrow. There was another woman who decided to have a pregnancy and a baby the natural way. But what was your point again?
That I didn't necessarily feel that they were being punished. They were just being shown that they can't survive without.
Yes. This concentrates on the extremities of what it is to go against the collective and demonstrate and display their sense of utilizing their free will.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, like I said, I thought it was very intriguing. It was a different kind of dystopian story than I have read before. And I liked that it was from the perspective of the starship. What are we called? Like the computer program?
It's like an AI.
Yeah.
It's driven by AI. It was humans input what they needed into this fold in order for it to function. So it's still human influenced. It's trying to. You're thinking that it's going to start thinking for itself, but it's ultimately.
Well, I felt like it almost kind of was the way it narrated the story. How it was like, no, I was trying to be a best friend because that's what this person needed. Like it was almost like it was trying to be what each person needed to get them to listen to it. And I thought that was just interesting.
Upon reading it a second time, it felt like it had better intentions than the power-hungry elite that probably put into it.
Yeah.
But I still think that it needs to grasp the idea that is not achievable.
Yeah, I get that.
But you want to say something, Larry?
Well, I thought it was pretty thought-provoking because there's a lot, that the ship or the AI says that it's true. Like the collective is important, and it is probably more important than the individual. But what that does not mean that the individual should be sacrificed in the way that it is. So it's like trying to find that line, and we've been doing that, since the beginning. Is trying to find that line of where one's individual needs are greater than the collective, and where the collective needs are greater than the individual, and when which has to sacrifice and.
But when it comes to leadership and what's being input into the fold, that's very subjective, and I get that sense that a lot of them will manipulate the idea of what is needed for the collective when in actuality it's more needed for their own personal desires.
Yes, and that is an interesting and probably the most important part of the discussion that we're having right now about AI is that an AI is always going to be dependent on the input. Mm-hmm. It's the programmers are going to establish what the AI is. So it's important to remember that. Like the idea of a general intelligence is probably a fantasy. It'll probably never happen. So everything is going to be only as good as the input that's in. And we saw Google a few months ago. They launched theirs for the first time, their AI chatbot. And they had to take it down almost immediately because it was getting a lot of bad press for the kind of social justice angle that it was programmed through, the lens, where it wouldn't draw a picture of a white person, for example. Like it just refused to do it. And that was because the people programming it wanted to prioritize, people of color or, different aspects. But if you asked it to draw a straight white guy, it just would refuse to do that because it said it was insensitive.
It's
So you know what I mean?
So yeah, it has a lot to do with like what you said, the person behind the program.
Right, yeah, the parameters that they put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's and the finding somebody who's completely unbiased and completely, basically sheltered into genius. That's the only way you're gonna get.
Well, there's no such person.
Exactly. Unless
because
you have
everybody
that
has
person,
a certain.
it's not gonna work.
Right. So it will never work. But because everybody comes from a paradigm, everybody has a way of interpreting the world that that they either come up with themselves or that's given to them, but there's no such thing as a perfectly neutral person or a neutral person. Everybody looks at things through the filter of their worldview.
And everybody's an individual. Nobody thinks, as you pointed out, nobody thinks the same. Nobody is the same. And individuality and what everybody has to offer is what keeps the world going, too. Mm-hmm. So to expect that everybody is going to think as a collective, and that in the same exact way at all points in time, is not going to. It's not achievable.
No, it's not.
And the punishment that's being casted upon, if you want your freedom, here's your freedom, is depicted in a way that's very extreme, where it's basically hopeless, and that they're going to be placed in a position where they're going to fail, and they're going to cry right back to the, in this case, the starship, the figure of authority. But this is the argument. According to the Fold, its argument is the fact that individual freedom equals selfishness, while as conforming to the collective is ideal. But
they do make it sound like towards the, I don't want to say the end, I guess it's more the middle, where he's like, okay, well, you're being off because you're of age where you could, repopulate and, do this. Like, it kind of makes it sound like this is going to come out the wrong way, but the collective is more important because they're at risk of not existing at all. And I don't know if, like, the AI or whatever it is just uses that to get her on the ship or what, but, like, I was like, I feel like that's a little detail that we have to think about, too, where it's like, okay, nope, you're of age where you can reproduce, so this is why we're putting you on this pod and we're going to send you out there, where you could possibly reproduce. It's like, okay, repopulate somewhere.
That's the whole. They're looking to genetically modify this group of people, and I think that it's interesting that it touches upon reproductive rights, because that's something that the individual should have a right to make. It's a decision that they should be able to make themselves.
No, I agree.
And in this case, it's the reverse of what is often criticized in society.
I think it just, what I would like a little bit more from this short story is like a little bit, I guess, more background of why they are where they are. Why has it come to this point?
I think it's more of a. I think it's more message driven. I think that this piece. I think it's more looking to provoke thought rather than,
which it absolutely does. But yes. But that's my thought is like, okay, we're on this starship. Everybody's being punished for being individuals, and we have to think about the collective. Well, if we have to think about the collective, and we're worried about repopulating, and like. Maybe Earth is destroyed and we're just looking for a new planet, so we're going to send a few people off and say, hey, can you live here and start repopulating? Okay, we can go there. Well, if that's the goal, then, okay, that makes sense.
But for what it's worth, I think that common sense would say yes, but...
But again, it's like...
The people that are in charge want their finger on everything. To me, the bottom line is that... leadership is the business of control. Yeah. And that they're more concerned about being in control, not losing their control, and making sure that the general population remains subservient to their authority than anything pertaining to what's best for everybody, what's best for...
And maybe that's just me being hopeful that, like, maybe this really is a bunch of people who actually want to do better, because you guys know me. I'm very much a, leave me alone kind of person. But you're right. Like, it's likely that there are people who just want to be in control and stay in control. That it's not actually about repopulating anywhere. It's just about, oh, well, you decided to be an individual, so you're going to repopulate a planet and then send them off to their death, which is essentially kind of what they did. So,
And, I mean, having them in the, you have them with the, it's the young mother, and then there's people that lied about what their position was. There's somebody that said they were a murderer.
And they weren't, or they were, but
it's interesting.
But he wanted to take on that role.
Yeah. How they did, I thought the pod thing was so crazy, how it was like, oh yeah, they were only in there for like less than a day and they started killing each other. And I'm like, really? Like, is that what we think people actually do?
And it makes you wonder, though, how many people are on the starship where, like, somebody could get away with a lie like that. Like, people were lying about what they did for a living and this and that. It's like, what, you never ran into these people on the starship before?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, even just a little background where it's like, how big is it? How many people are on it? But you are focused on just this AI and this, like you said, central character. And then a couple other characters that you don't even really get to know. It's just, this is what they did and this is why they're on the pod.
You also only get the perspective of the AI, the fold. But, it's the other people that were in the refugees within the pod. It was... a policy evangelist whose purpose was to sow harmony between the fold and the crew, but he said he was a ship's officer. And then the robotics repairman said that he was there for killing somebody.
Yeah.
But, they killed off the policy evangelist went first. They ended up... then they ended up going on... it was regarding the moral as far as the robotics repairman taking on the role of the killer, and whether or not the women, the one who got in trouble for having her own baby, and Unica, if they were to off the repairman, then they would be killers. But some kind of they created an accident where he ended up being off anyway.
Yeah.
So,
I liked it.
Yeah, I thought that the AI was really well written. That was a strong part of the
Yes.
story. You know,
Oh,
the
yeah.
elements about, you know, how, like how realistic some of these elements were, from the human side were, you know, questionable. But the strong part of the story was definitely the AI.
I think that's what I liked most about it, because I don't know, when you first mentioned the story and I was trying to like look for it online, and like when you try to look it up online, it doesn't give you any detail about it. So I'm like, I don't even know. And so when you said skipping stones in the dark, I'm just picturing, I don't know, some hillbilly kids at a river or something, like, oh, this is gonna be a boring ass story. I'm not looking forward to it. But then, you know, I get to it and it starts off and it's like, wait, there's a starship and we're, okay, this is a computer basically talking to us. Like, okay, I'm very, very intrigued, and not just because it's a starship, but it's the whole narrative. Every last word is written from the AI's perspective.
Yeah.
And that to me is just so unique. I've not read anything like that before, and I really enjoyed that.
I would like to see some more works written. I want to see some dystopian works written from the people that are instigating or antagonizing, and the ones that are in control of the general population.
Didn't they do that with Hunger Games? With didn't they come out with like
Snow.
the snow thing? I haven't read it, but
Songbirds and snakes.
yeah, that.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like it's just interesting, like, to know. Okay, you have this whole dystopian world, and of course you see it from the perspective of the people suffering most from it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I want it. Like, how did we get to that point? Everybody's talking about how, like, this is what's gonna happen to us. Okay, but how? How did it happen, and why do you think it's gonna happen to us? You know, like, I need some background, and I think more stories from that perspective will help. I don't know, just give us a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Alrighty then. Do we have any final thoughts?
No, I think I said everything I wanted to say.
I think anything that was left unsaid, as far as my part's concerned, you can check out my video. I discussed Skipping Stones in the Dark as an individual video because it really stuck with me. It's probably one of the...
I'll remember it for sure.
One of the most memorable short stories I've ever read.
Yep, and I'm going to be watching that video soon, Josh. I started to watch it. I watched the first few seconds of it, and then I said to myself, boy, Josh is really passionate about this story. I got to check it out before I hear what he has to say about it.
But,
No, I very much enjoyed it, and I think it was very well, very well done. Like, bravo on the author.
mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's definitely something that really, and it makes me really think about, to me, how important the freedom is, one's individuality, and how with freedom, it's not meant to be something that you can be reckless with, and
It's not true freedom.
yeah, just
Like-
freedom is being able to live and let other people live and have faith in the fact that they're going to make the right decision.
Yeah.
There are instances where you're going to have to act if they do something that deliberately and intentionally hurts other people, and you would want to help them if they're deliberately and intentionally wanting to hurt themselves. But ultimately, freedom is the ability to have faith in yourself and being able to do the right thing, and hope that other people do too. They may have different ways at perceiving that way of thinking, but you have to let people do what they feel is right, just as you have to do what you feel is right.
Yeah, that might be a discussion we can have at another time, because I got to think about that. But I do want to say that I liked, or one aspect that I didn't mention, I just really remembered, was how manipulative this AI is.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Yes, and the way that it tells the story, because I'm thinking there's no gender to the AI.
I would think so. I read it in a guy's voice, but
I mean, I think a lot of people would, and there's a certain guy's voice I had in mind.
Like Hal.
that very
Is it Hal?
Not really Hal. It's very
For me, it's Hal.
creepy.
I'm afraid I
that
can't do
very
that.
like I don't know. I picture like I can't even think of the right movie, but it's like yes, I understand. Please do this, and it's just like so robotic and
I thought he was more like
emotionless.
Like Unica.
Yeah.
Unica, how could you, Tara, leave a scar on your eyebrow? Don't you know you're going to have to go into the refugee pod now?
I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave.
And these are our best robotic voices for AI.
Yes.
I didn't even. I thought him more. I thought him more human-like, but very creepily human-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's where I get out of this. But he is very manipulative. But I still think that what infuriates me the most is the idea that one has to think about whether or not they should be more concerned about whether or not they should have to sacrifice their freedom and common sense in order to conform to what the authorities are telling them.
And that's what if you take it at just what is offered with no other information, like it does it like you said, very thought provoking. Like when is it worth this versus worth that? But I also like it's like I feel like everything to an extent is circumstantial. It's like what are the circumstances behind this where anything is felt that the collective is more important than the individual.
Yeah.
Versus
when you have that discussion, the thing that you have to consider is that the actions that you take have repercussions that you may not even know.
Mm-hmm.
So intention is part of it, but it's not the be all and end all of it.
Yeah.
Because if you hurt somebody, whether intentionally or not, or if you hurt yourself, then that's hurting yourself. And these things have to be considered, and they do have to be mediated to some degree.
There has to be some kind of action taken, but it has to be properly evaluated. Too.
Yes, and it can't be based on this manipulation, I'll show them, I'll send them, toward a star, scare the heck out of them, bring them back, and then they'll understand.
On one hand, I think that this could be arguing toward a certain point as far as what is more, whether or not one should question the whether or not freedom is selfishness and thinking as a collective is ideal. But I think that ultimately this short story was written to provoke thought.
Yeah.
And gives you the tools to think for yourself. And it's a thought exercise to determine how would you respond in a situation like this, and how much is your freedom worth.
What do you think happened to the ship at the end? When Unico was on that vessel,
And it changed course after it went past the star.
Any thoughts on that?
We don't know. That's something that the Fold ponders themselves.
Yeah.
I was gonna
And
say.
I mean, it doesn't seem hopeful because there doesn't really seem like it's going anywhere. However, I think that the Fold is pondering its own being, knowing that it needs a reformation, that it needs to be that there's a lot that's still flawed within its system.
Interesting.
But it's, I mean, this is, if it would be thinking for itself, of course.
Well, it even
needs the
states
input.
it's like, well, I hope that it found somewhere and she's surviving somehow on a terrain underground somewhere, and that's what I like to think. Like, pretty sure he even says that. It's like, that's what I hope. And it's like, so it's interesting how it's like, you've got this computer just doing computer things, and then it's like, well, I like to think that this is what happened.
It's creepy.
Yeah, and it's like, no, the likelihood of that actually happening is like 0, but
Right.
it's like, I'm still going to be hopeful. And you're like, it's just interesting because, I don't know, I feel that Unica, survives that, and it's like, this, I can't go back. and changed the course of the pod. And
That's what
I
I
do
would think.
think that she isn't alive. I think she did die because
Right.
she changed the course. But I think that was her last stand of individuality.
Yeah.
And so, but I just thought it was interesting how, again, the AI is just doing all the typical computer things, and then all of a sudden it's just like, well, I like to think that she's alive somewhere, even though I know that's not likely.
But does the computer know that it's speaking to a human audience and therefore trying to manipulate the reader?
Could be.
Right?
No one knows.
It's very much up for interpretation.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Alrighty then. If you're interested in checking this out, there are 2 ways you can find it. You can find it in the Fantasy and Science Fiction issue from November and December of 2020.
Or the scientific fiction, the best American science fiction and fantasy with Veronica Roth of 2021.
She was the guest editor.
Yes, guest editor. It
And
says that on there.
I want to thank everybody for tuning into this discussion, and be sure to join us next time for another episode of The Gladiators. For now, keep reading.